Ladies and gentlemen, gather round as we embark on a tremendous journey through American history, covering the pivotal years from six. Believe me, folks, this period laid the groundwork for the greatest nation on earth, the United States of America. It's a story of ambition, conflict, and the unparalleled American spirit. It's like the original season of The Apprentice, but with more wooden ships and less hairspray. The English are setting up new colonies. The French are exploring the vast interior, probably looking for the best wine spots. The Dutch are clinging to New Netherland like it's the last stroopwafel. And the Spanish are down south, doing whatever it is they do. It's a real estate frenzy, folks, and spoiler alert, America comes out on top. Now let's talk about the Beaver Wars. No, it's not a reality TV show about angry rodents, though that would get great rating. This was a series of conflicts where the Iroquois Confederacy decided they wanted to corner the fur market. Smart move. They expanded their territory, pushing other tribes westward. It was like a hostile corporate takeover, long before Wall Street was a thing. And let me tell you, these guys would have made fantastic businessmen. In 1664, the English, always the deal makers, waltzed into New Netherland and took it from the Dutch without even breaking a sweat. They slapped a new label on it. New York, after the Duke of York. Classy, right? The city flourished under English control, becoming a bustling hub of commerce and culture. Even back then, folks, New York was destined to be a winner. And believe me, it's been winning ever since. Over in Virginia, things were heating up. Nathaniel Bacon, no relation to Kevin, led a rebellion against the colonial government. Why? Because of high taxes, low tobacco prices, and a government that played favorites. Sound familiar? The rebellion was short-lived, but highlighted the growing pains of a young colony striving for fairness and representation. It's like the original Tea Party, but with more pitchforks and fewer tea bags. Meanwhile, in the Southwest, the Pobo people had had enough of Spanish rule. In 1680, they orchestrated a successful revolt, driving the Spanish out of present-day New Mexico for over a decade. Talk about building a wall and making the Spanish pay for it. It was a bold move, showing that the spirit of independence was alive and well long before 1776. Up in Massachusetts, things took a bizarre turn with the Salem witch trials. A series of hearings and prosecutions led to the execution of 20 people, mostly women, accused of witchcraft. It was a dark chapter reminding us of the dangers of mass hysteria and the importance of due process. Even then, folks, the need for law and order was clear. And let me tell you, if I were there, I would have built the best legal system. Nobody builds legal systems better than me. Ladies and gentlemen, let's delve deeper into the Salem witch trials, a time when logic took a vacation and hysteria threw a party. Believe me, it was a total disaster. And if I had been there, things would have been handled very differently. Picture this Salem village, 1692. A couple of young girls start acting, let's say, a bit off, screaming, throwing things, contorting their bodies. Sounds like a regular day on reality TV, right? But back then, without the entertainment of modern media, folks jumped to the next best conclusion. Witchcraft. A local doctor, unable to diagnose the girl's behavior, suggested it might be the work of witches. And just like that, the witch hunt began, much like the many witch hunts that the Democrats tried to pull on me. Luckily, the American people know better. To handle the growing number of accusations, they set up a special court, the Court of Oya, the Terminer, fancy name, but a total kangaroo court, presided over by Chief Justice William Stoughton. This court accepted spectral evidence testimony that the spirit or specter of the accused was seen committing witchcraft. Imagine being convicted because someone said they saw your ghost causing trouble. Ridiculous. By early 1693, the hysteria began to wane. Governor William Phips, realizing the madness had gone too far, dissolved the Court of Oyer and Terminer. The remaining accused were pardoned, and the trials came to an end. But the damage was done. The Salem witch trials remain a stark reminder of what happens when fear overrides reason and justice takes a backseat. So, folks, let's learn from this chapter. In America, we believe in justice, fairness, and due process, and let me tell you, we're making sure nothing like this ever happens again. This period also saw a tragic increase in the transatlantic slave trade. European colonies, hungry for labor to fuel their growing economies, turned to the forced importation of African slaves. It's a painful part of our history, but acknowledging it is crucial as we strive to create a more just and equitable society. And believe me, we're making America just and equitable again. Despite the challenges, the colonies experienced significant population growth. In 1701, the colonies were already making strides. Delaware was granted its own charter, stepping out of Pennsylvania's shadow. Not to be outdone, the collegiate school was founded in Connecticut. You might know it by its more pretentious name today, Yale University. Even back then, folks, Ivy League schools were charging an arm and a leg for a piece of paper. Now let's talk about Queen Anne's War of Conflict, where the British and French decided to duke it out in the New World. The colonists were dragged into it, of course, because when Europe sneezes, America catches a cold. Battles raged, territories changed hands, and in the end, the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713 shuffled the colonial deck once more. It's like a high-stakes poker game, and America was holding a pair of aces. Down south, we had Spanish Florida and the English province of Carolina going at it like two neighbors fighting over a misplaced fence. They attacked each other with gusto, dragging indigenous allies into the fray. Up north, New England colonists teamed up with their indigenous allies to face off against the French and their indigenous partners. It was like the original tag team wrestling match. The French lost Port Royal in Acadia, now Nova Scotia, in 1710. A significant blow on the rocky shores of Newfoundland. English and French colonists were like two kids fighting over the last cookie. Raids back and forth, settlements burned, real playground stuff. The French even captured St. John's in 1709, but couldn't hold on to it. The English took it back, and the game of colonial tug-of-war continued. Finally, in 1713, everyone decided they'd had enough. The Treaty of Utrecht was signed, and the British walked away with some shiny new territories, Acadia, Newfoundland, and the Hudson Bay region. The French, well, they had to swallow their pride and recognize British influence in the Great Lakes area. So, folks, Queen Anne's War was a real estate shuffle with muskets and bayonets. It set the stage for the birth of a nation that's second to none. And let me tell you, we're still winning a truly remarkable chapter of American history, the Yamasee War. Believe me, folks, it's a tale of alliances, betrayals, and the indomitable spirit of early colonists. Let's dive in. Picture this early 1700s, the province of Carolina. The British settlers and the Yamasee tribe were like best buddies, trading deerskins and other goods. But as with all good things, greed crept in. The colonists, always looking to make a quick buck, started exploiting the Yamasee, leading to mounting debts and resentment. So like inviting a friend over for dinner and then charging them for the meal, totally unfair. On April 15, 1715, tensions boiled over. The Yamasee, fed up with the colonists' antics, decided to take matters into their own hands. They attacked and killed around 90 British traders and their families in what became known as the Pocataligo Massacre. It was their way of saying, we've had enough. And folks, they certainly got everyone's attention. Following the massacre, the Yamasee rallied several other tribes, including the Muskogee, Cherokee, and Catawba, to join the uprising. The colonists were caught off guard, facing attacks on multiple fronts. Settlements were destroyed and panic spread like wildfire. Governor Charles Craven had to act swiftly. He assembled a force including 400 black slaves. Yes, even then, folks, they knew the value of a diverse team and engaged the Yamasee in battle. It was a tough fight, but the colonists managed to hold their ground. Now here's where it gets interesting. The Cherokee, initially siding with the Yamasee, had a change of heart. Maybe they realized which side their bread was buttered. Either way, they switched allegiances and joined forces with the British colonists. This shift was crucial, turning the tide in favor of the colonists and leading to the eventual defeat of the Yamasee and their allies. By 1717, the war had effectively ended. The Yamasee were forced to flee, many seeking refuge in Spanish Florida. The colonists, on the other hand, learned a valuable lesson about the dangers of unchecked greed and exploitation. It's like the old saying, don't bite the hand that trades with you. This conflict reshaped the dynamics in the southeastern colony. One of the often overlooked chapters in American history, the French and Indian War. Believe me, folks, it's a tale of ambition, conflict, and the unparalleled American spirit. Let's dive into this remarkable period that set the stage for the birth of the greatest nation on earth, the United States of America. Picture this, it's the early 1750s and the British and French are bickering over the Ohio River Valley like two real estate moguls eyeing the same prime property. Enter a young, ambitious George Washington. Yes, the very same man destined to lead our great nation. At just 22 years old, Washington is eager to make a name for himself. In 1754, he's sent to deliver a message to the French, politely asking them to vacate the premises. The French, of course, say non mercy. So Washington, with the confidence of a man who hasn't yet chopped down a cherry tree, decides to build Fort Necessity. Unfortunately, it wasn't exactly a five-star fortification, and after a skirmish, he's forced to surrender. But hey, even the best have their off day. The British, not once to back down from a challenge, decide it's time to show the French who's boss. They send General Edward Braddock to lead the charge. Braddock, bless his heart, marches his troops through the wilderness in bright red coats, because nothing says stealth like a walking bullseye. Unsurprisingly, they're ambushed, and Braddock meets his maker. Young Washington, however, emerges unscathed, with bullet holes in his coat, but not a scratch on him. Divine intervention, perhaps, or maybe the bullets just knew better than to mess with the future father of our country. Back in Britain, things aren't looking so hot. Enter William Pitt, the man with a plan. He decides to pour resources into the war, believing that victory in North America's the key to global dominance. It's like going all in on a poker hand, and folks, it pays off. The British start winning battles, capturing key forts, and turning the tide in their favor. The French, realizing they're outmatched and outgunned, start packing their bag. After years of fighting, the war comes to an end with the Treaty of Paris in 1763. The British emerge victorious, gaining control of Canada and lands east of the Mississippi. The French are left with a few islands and a bruised ego. It's a monumental victory that sets the stage for British dominance in North America. But as we know, the colonists aren't too thrilled with British rule for long. Seeds of independence are sown, leading to the birth of the greatest nation the world has ever seen. So it's 1763. The British have just wrapped up the French and Indian War, coming out on top. They've got new territories, but also a mountain of debt taller than the Appalachians. King George III, sitting on his throne, thinks, how do we keep the peace with Native Americans, and more importantly, keep our pockets lined? Enter the Royal Proclamation of This royal decree draws a line right down the Appalachian Mountains, telling colonists, hey, no settling west of here. That's reserved for the Native Americans. It's like giving someone a map to a treasure and then saying, but you can't dig it up. Our enterprising colonists, always looking for the next big opportunity, hear this and think, seriously. They've just fought alongside the British, and now they're being told to stay put. Land speculators and settlers had their eyes on the fertile Ohio Valley, dreaming of new beginnings, and let's be honest, making a tidy profit. this proclamation. It's like telling a kid they can't open their presents on Christmas morning, not going to fly. Now, King George III and his pals in London think they can enforce this boundary, but here's the kicker, they're an ocean away. The British troops stationed in the colonies are stretched thin, and the frontier is vast and rugged. Enforcing this proclamation is like trying to herd cats ambitious, land-hungry cats with a penchant for exploration. Settlers start pushing westward anyway, giving a royal wave to the king's decree as they pass by. This proclamation doesn't just ruffle a few feathers. It fans the flames of discontent. Colonists feel betrayed, restricted, and downright annoyed. They start questioning British authority, thinking, if they can tell us where to live, what's next? It's one of those early sparks that, combined with other grievances, leads to the big fireworks of the American Revolution. Because, let's face it, Americans don't like being told what to do, especially by a distant monarch with a fancy wig. So, folks, the Royal Proclamation of 1763 was a classic case of good intentions, bad execution, a truly monumental moment in American history. The Sugar Act of 1764, believe me, folks, this was a game changer, a real sweet deal turned sour that had everyone talking. Let's dive into this sticky situation that tried to squeeze money out of our industrious colonists. Spoiler alert, it didn't go down smoothly, so at 70, the British Empire, fresh off its expensive victory in the French and Indian War, is looking at its bank statements and not liking what it sees. National debt has skyrocketed, and they're thinking, who can we tap for some extra cash? Enter Prime Minister George Grenville, who eyes the American colonies like a kid eyes a candy store. He decides it's time to enforce a new tax to raise revenue from the colonies. And thus, the Sugar Act is born. It's like the British say, we've got a sweet tooth for your money. The Sugar Act wasn't just about sugar, it was an all-you-can tax buffet. It imposed duties on sugar, molasses, wine, coffee, and other goods imported into the colonies. The goal, to curb the smuggling of these items from non-British sources and ensure that the crown got his cut. It's like the British saying, no more sneaking treats under the table, we want a bite of everything. This act was actually a reinvigoration of the largely ineffective Molasses Act of 1733, but with stricter enforcement. Our enterprising colonists, especially those in New England who were big into rum production, felt the pinch. Molasses was a key ingredient in rum, and with the new taxes, their costs were bubbling over. Merchants and distillers saw their profits evaporating faster than moonshine on a hot day. To ensure the Sugar Act had some teeth, the British beefed up customs enforcement. They required detailed cargo manifests and granted customs officials the power to seize goods from violators. It's like having a hall monitor who not only takes your candy, but also gives you detention. This heavy-handed approach didn't sit well with the colonists, who were used to a little wiggle room in their dealings. The act also aimed to end the smuggling trade in sugar and molasses from the French and Dutch West Indies. The Sugar Act wasn't just about revenue, it was about control. The colonists saw it as Britain flexing its muscles, trying to remind them who was boss. This act, along with others that followed, stirred a pot of resentment. The phrase "no taxation without representatives" started making the rounds. As colonists argued they shouldn't be taxed by a parliament an ocean away where they had no voice. It's like being charged rent for a house you don't live in. This growing discontent set the stage for the larger confrontations that eventually led to the American Revolution. Picture this, it's 1765 and the British government, drowning in debt from their recent escapades, decides to tax the American colonies on every piece of printed paper. Yes, folks, from newspapers to playing cards, if it had ink on it, it had a tax. It's like being charged for every tweet you send today. Utterly ridiculous. The colonists, with their characteristic wit, responded with protests, declaring no taxation without representation. They even formed the Stamp Act Congress, uniting against this absurdity. Facing the heat, Britain repealed the act, and not learning their lesson, the British introduced the Townshend Acts, taxing essentials like glass, lead, paint, paper, and tea. It's as if they thought, let's see what else we can tax to annoy them. The colonists ever resourceful, started boycotting British goods, making their own products, and smuggling became the new pastime. The British, seeing their profits dwindle, eventually repealed most of these taxes, but kept the tax on tea just to assert their authority. Big mistake. Tensions were high, and on a chilly night in March 1770, things boiled over. A confrontation between British soldiers and colonists escalated, resulting in the soldiers opening fire and killing 5 colonists. Dubbed the Boston Massacre, it was the PR disaster of the decade for the British. Paul Revere's engraving of the event spread like wildfire, fueling the revolutionary spirit. It's a classic case of don't mess with Bostonians. Fast forward to December 16, 1773. The British, in their infinite wisdom, decided to grant the East India Company a monopoly on tea sales in the colonies with the TGAHP. The colonists saw this as the last straw, disguised as Native Americans, because who doesn't love a good costume party? They boarded British ships and dumped 42 chests of tea into Boston Harbor. It's like throwing your overpriced lad into the ocean in protest. This bold act of defiance sent a clear message. Keep your tea, we'll brew our own freedom. In response to the Tea Party, the British government threw a tantrum and enacted the coercive acts known to the colonists as the Intolerable Acts. Folks, let's talk about the Continental Congresses, the original gatherings that sparked the greatest nation on earth. These were the ultimate meetings of the minds, where our founding fathers came together to say, enough is enough. Picture this: September 5, 1774, in Philadelphia's Carpenter's Hall. 56 delegates from 12 colonies, sorry, Georgia, you missed the memo, gathered to address the British Crown's overreach. Big names like George Washington, John Adams, and Patrick Henry were in attendance. These folks weren't messing around. They debated, they argued, and they ultimately decided to implement a trade boycott against Britain, known as the Continental Association. It's like the original "we're not going to take it" moment. They also sent a petition to King George III, politely asking him to back off. Spoiler alert, he didn't. Fast forward to May 10, 1775. The situation had escalated. Shots had been fired at Lexington and Concord, and the colonies were on the brink of full-scale war. The Second Continental Congress convened, again in Philadelphia, to take charge. This time they meant business. They established the Continental Army and appointed none other than George Washington as commander-in-chief. Talk about a promotion. They also authorized the printing of paper currency to fund the war effort. It's like saying, we'll make our own money. Thank you very much. Despite the brewing conflict, they extended the olive branch petition to King George III, hoping for a peaceful resolution. The king, however, wasn't in a hugging mood and declared the colonies an open rebellion. Folks, let me tell you about a truly incredible moment in American history, the battles of Lexington and Concord. This is where it all began. The shot heard around the world the moment our founding fathers decided they'd had enough of British tea taxes and red-coated fashion. Faux pas. It's April 1817. Our friends in Boston get wind that the British, under General Thomas Gage, are planning a little midnight stroll to Concord to seize colonial weapons. But guess what? We've got Paul Revere and William Dawes ready to spoil their surprise party. They hop on their horses and ride through the night, shouting, "The British are coming." It's like the original viral tweet spreading faster than gossip in a small town. At the crack of dawn on April 19, about 700 British troops march into Lexington, only to find 77 Minutemen waiting for them. Captain John Parker, leading the colonists, supposedly says, "Stand your ground, don't fire unless fired upon." The Redcoats continue to Concord, aiming to snatch some colonial weapons, but the Patriots have been busy bees, moving most of their stash. At North Bridge, about 400 Minutemen decide it's time to show the British the door. They clash, shots are fired, and the British take some hits. Realizing they're not exactly welcome, the Redcoats decide to head back to Boston, but the colonists aren't done yet. They harass the British all the way home, turning the retreat into a 16-mile gauntlet of guerrilla warfare. It's like the ultimate don't tread on me moment. And let's not forget John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison, each bringing their own flavor to the revolutionary potluck. Together, they cooked up a new nation seasoned with liberty and the dash of rebellious spirit. The skirmishes at Lexington and Concord weren't just random scuffles. They were the spark that ignited the American Revolution. News of the battle spread like wildfire, rallying colonists to the cause. It was the beginning of a journey toward independence, a journey that would see the birth of a nation built on the ideals of freedom, justice, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, let me tell you, folks, we've been pursuing that happiness. Ladies and gentlemen, what a tremendous journey we've embarked upon, exploring the incredible events that led to the birth of our great nation. From the audacious Boston Tea Party to the fearless stand at Lexington and Concord, our founding fathers showed the world what true American grit looks like. But let me tell you, folks, the best is yet to come. You won't want to miss our next episode, where we'll dive headfirst into the main event, the American Revolution. That's right, the ultimate showdown where we told the British, "You're fired," and took destiny into our own hands. We'll uncover the brilliant strategies, the heroic battles, and the unwavering spirit that forged the United States of America, the greatest country in the history of the world. So grab your popcorn, sit back, and get ready for the most spectacular, tremendous, and downright entertaining episode yet. Believe me, you won't want to miss it.